Hey guys, I'm Musty Hobbit, and there's nothing that a hobbit loves more than another helping of Second Breakfast, so welcome back. There's been a lot of news lately about the SNES Classic, and I don't want to talk about it. Plenty of other people are covering it. I'm sure that you're probably tired of it as well, so we're just going to pass on it this week. I want to do something non-gaming today, and we are going to talk about fears. But first, as always, this is Second Breakfast, so let's talk about some of the things that were going on with me over the past week. We went to another baseball game. The local single-A team, the Cedar Rapids Colonels, we took my son. He had a blast. It was actually a really kind of perfect day. We had seats that were just in the shade. I'm glad that we got to go. My son wants to go to another, so we were going to try and find an opportunity to get him to a few more baseball games, which is great. I'm all for as much of that as possible. This week, though, I have been busy finishing games off my backlog. I have played, I finally finished 3 of them, one of them being Abzu, which I played last week on a few people's recommendation. I would back that recommendation. I would suggest that you go play that. It is a short game, maybe 2 to 3 hours, depending on how much exploration you really want to do. It is a beautiful game, and it is one of the most zen experiences that you can have. It's really great. Try it out. I would recommend it if you can find it on the cheap, all the better. I know that it was a PS Plus game a little while back, so if I'm not sure how that all works, don't have PS Plus. So if you happen to download it, I would suggest getting through that. Find a night and just play it. It is really, really great. I think there's some lore and things that I might a secondary playthrough might get out of that for me. So it might be worth playing through more than once, and certainly it is small enough that is very realistic. I mentioned last week that I started Uncharted. I have now finished Uncharted. I finished that over the weekend, and it was a great experience. I'm happy that was the first game that I have finished on my PS3, and I'm looking forward to playing the rest in the series. Not just yet. I kind of want to space those out and play some other games. And so I started God of War 3, which is the original trilogy, the major releases. I have not played this one, and so far does not disappoint. That opening scene with climbing Gaia and fighting off Poseidon, incredible, and plays great on this television. I'm really impressed so far with that. Looking forward to finishing that. Maybe we'll talk about that next week. And then the last game that I just finished like 10 minutes ago, and that was Final Fantasy IV. I did it. This was the game of the month for June. I was really pushing and hoping that I could get it done in time so that I could make this recording, and we did. So it's very good. I don't know what took me so long, and to those of you who have also played it recently, I'm looking forward to hearing what the podcast had to say. I will likely be talking to you guys about the game a little bit myself, because very, very pleased with it. It is definitely a very good Final Fantasy game, and I enjoyed it as a portable game. Which is interesting, because up to this point, like, I just kind of shied away from portable stuff. It just hasn't been my thing since high school, maybe, or early high school. And so that actually leads me into the question for today. Kyle from Game Time with Kyle asked, now that I've dipped my toe in the PS3 library, and I'm kind of on my way there, he says, what library is next? And Kyle, your timing could not be more perfect. I'm going to start dipping my toe in the 3DS library as of this weekend, because I'm getting a 2DS XL. I have it on reserve at GameStop, and I will be getting that on Friday. So I'm looking forward to playing that. I've been getting some recommendations from people on some of the big titles to go after. I still haven't decided, though, whether I want to do physical or go mainly or exclusively digital. So that is something that I need to come up with a decision there in my mind. I don't really know for sure which way I want to go, but it is the line is a little more gray than it normally would be. It's not as cut and dry. So I will make up my mind eventually. I do have Theatrhythm Final Fantasy Curtain Call, which is the rhythm game with Final Fantasy music, which is like kind of a perfect Venn diagram of exactly what I like about a few different interests of mine. So it'll be really nice to play that, but I am hoping that I will probably bring that and my Switch to Barry. I'm hoping I can find some other 3DS games, or if there are other people who are there who have them that I could use for, say on the trip or something. Maybe we could take advantage of that. But looking forward to trying out that library, trying out that handheld, and I don't want to promise things because promising things always ends up kicking you. I was planning on doing some stuff about the 2DS XL for you guys, maybe an unboxing, which is something I haven't done in a really long time, or some like just general first impressions of the unit itself. So, or maybe a little bit of both, maybe another Venn diagram of that. So look forward to that potentially. If I do that, I will need to do it as early as I can to, make sure that people who want to see it can see it. So, but thanks again, Kyle, for the question. The timing on it was great. You nailed it with that one. And if you have a question for me and would like to ask that for a future episode of Second Breakfast, reach out to me on Twitter. You can either @mention me or use the hashtag #ToBeAnswers, and I will look forward to answering those in a future episode. So let's get to the topic today, and I'm not giving an analysis of fear as a thing. I actually just wanted to talk about stuff that freaks me out. And I'm interested to hear from you guys. So if any of this is inspiring to you and you want to share, please feel free to do so in the comments, or whatever forums that you have access to me and want to talk about it. I have a couple of big fears, and some of these have been fears from when I was young, and they've just kind of stuck around. Things that kind of just creep me out, and things that I'm not a fan of. One of those being heights. In some scenarios, it's not true vertigo, but I tend to. I'll give you an example. Stadium seating at a baseball game, the highest level, like the upper deck, those tend to get a little sharply inclined depending on the stadium that you are at. And sometimes I'm walking down a row to get to my seat, and I feel like I can't trust myself to keep my feet on the ground. I tend to lean myself more toward the seats. I tend to make sure I'm holding something. It's a very strange thing. I can do enclosed high, like the Sears Tower. I'm still going to call it that. Or they've got some of those. They have the things now where they push the wall out, and you can actually walk out onto a glass box, basically suspended out, hundreds of feet above the ground. I wouldn't do that until recently. So I've actually started trying to use that to, in the times that I've been there, to try and combat this. But yeah, it's just it's a weird kind of thing. Another big fear, a lot of people have some kind of heebie-jeebies with animals or with critters of some kind, and spiders were always kind of my thing growing up. Now that is improved quite a bit. I actually find myself I'm now becoming better at. I'm probably one of the best in the family of taking care of scenarios like that. Although we did have, and I'll try and flash a picture up here. I did have one time after we had sort of washed our siding on the back of our house. We lived kind of by some tall trees and like a big kind of acreage that a guy has, and I'm not sure where this thing came from. But if you take a look at this was between the screen and the glass after we had sort of power washed the back siding of the house. And I thought of it when I first came down the stairs and I looked out the window. I was like, "Ooh, that's weird, there's a mustache there." And that spider was huge, and I don't know where it went. It just went away. I kind of didn't bother it. I just said I think I gave myself if it's there tomorrow, I will figure out what to do with it, and it was gone. It was far too big to easily make its way into our home. This was also years ago, so unless he's planning on coming back, I think he's gone. All in all, though, spiders, they're creepy. They're kind of jarring when you come across them for me now, but I'm not as terrified as I used to be. And then I want to give you the last thing I want to mention is an irrational fear that I have, which is grounded in some personal experience, but is kind of a strange thing, and I think some people kind of chuckle at me about this one. So I'll explain the fear, and then I'll tell you where it came from. So when I'm at work, most of the time the offices that I'm at are on the second floor. And sometimes there's construction work downstairs. They're kind of renovating an area or updating a lab space or something like that. So there's a lot of noises, power tools and things like that. And there's something about the sound of drills under the floor underneath me that it freaks me out, and I do not like it one bit. I actually take my feet off the ground. And the irrational part to this is, in no scenario do I ever see a drill bit actually coming up through the floor, but that's what I'm worried about. It's weird. Now, it's like something out of a horror movie, right? So every time that happens, I hear the sound of a drill or something that sounds like a drill under the floor. You'll see me on my chair. I'll just put my feet up on the casters to get my feet off the ground. It's ridiculous. Now, the source of this, I had some foot trauma in 5th grade. I had done my sister is an artist. She's a sculptor now. She was always doing arts and crafts when she was younger, and we had this kind of, I don't know if it was shag carpeting. It was a very high pile carpeting, and she was doing some sculptures with toothpicks. And she didn't put them all away one day. In fact, one of them fell onto the floor, got hooked into the carpet, and was standing up like this. And I found it. And I found it in a bad way. I stepped on it. And before I go any further, I just want to tell you, if you're squeamish, skip ahead 30 seconds or something. It went about halfway into my foot. And so I collapsed, obviously, in an immense amount of pain. And my mom came out and pulled the toothpick out. And it got worse because 5 or 6 months later, it had all healed and everything. It had gotten infected, and it started to, so I ended up having to have surgery to remove the, I guess it was a splinter or something that was in there, the foreign body in my foot. And from there, I had to actually walk my 5th grade graduation on crutches. But from that point on, I think that's kind of where this carefulness about the bottom of my feet kind of came from. It kind of, so I think that's where that comes from. So here you go, life stories. Clean up your toothpicks if you're doing sculpture. But I think that could be some of what it is. Who knows? And then I guess the only other thing, and I've never actually seen one in real life, but recurring kind of dream interrupter that I have is tornadoes. I live in Iowa. I've lived in Illinois prior to this. We are in Tornado Alley. It is windy, and it just happens, and they can pop up out of nowhere. We've had tornado warnings the past couple weeks on Friday nights, just out of nowhere. No planned storms, and all of a sudden it's unstable enough to where there's a tornado warning or tornado watch or something along those lines. Like I said, I've never seen a tornado. We had some pretty nasty ones in Iowa City a few years back. But basically, yeah, I've had a lot of dreams. All of a sudden you open a window and there's a tornado coming, and it kind of turns whatever it is you're dreaming about into something entirely different. I'm sure there's some meaning to that. If you are at all a dream analyzer, analyze away. Anyways, that's where I'm going to leave you now. I thank you for listening to my ramblings. I'm interested to hear if you have similar fears or what kind of things you are afraid of. Please, again, leave a comment if you are willing, or if we want to talk about it maybe on the Cartridge Club forums. Please feel free to do that. One final mention I want to make, Jared at Retro Revolution, I know that you are finishing up your consoleized PSP, and I know you're moving on to a couple other mods. I have a challenge coming your way, so stick around. I have an idea. We'll talk. Please like the video if you did, and if you happen to not like me talking not game stuff, let me know. This is an experiment and just something that I wanted to try to kind of put something else out there that's not just the standard boilerplate news that everyone else is talking about. So if you enjoyed this, again, I would be interested to hear that, and I hope that this inspires a little bit of conversation here. Anyways, I'm going to take off. I've been Musty. Take care of yourself. Be good to each other. Bye.